Welcome, friends. Can I call you friends? I don't know. What we are talking about today, because we're getting close to the release of 9.1, it's just about a week actually, if you're in NA, and a week and some 12 hours if you're in EU. If you're in Asia, I don't fucking know when you get your patches. However, we are close. So we have to talk about the new gearing system that you will have to go through in 9.1, because it's gonna be different compared to 9.0. There's going to be quite a few different things you have to keep track of. Now, before we go into the actual system, the new system, which is going to be the Shards of Domination, we have to look at a few positive things that I will reiterate in this video as well, which is the fact that you're going to have quite a few less obstructions and frustrating parts on your gearing process and your setting up your character process compared to the release of this expansion. You won't have to deal, for example, with soul binds. You won't have to, start from the ground up on all of your soul binds. Instead, now you have all three of them unlocked and fully leveled. You will only have to go through a couple extra options on your soul binds. You won't have to deal with legendary hunting, for example. You will have all of your legendaries available to you. Very likely you will already have crafted your rank 4 legendaries you want. So you won't have to wait for weeks before you get your pattern, and then more weeks to get your legendary crafted, etc, etc. That's also very good. We can also mention the fact that Cortia, the new, let's say, end game zone, is significantly better than the Maw. You will start the zone already with a mount as opposed to the Maw. You will not have to do as much grinding in there. Cortia is shorter, is smaller. There is less amount of enemies you have to chew through compared to the Maw. So there are quite a few systems which make it more approachable and less grindable compared to the release of the expansion. Now, however, talking about the new system, the Shards of Domination. Now, this new system is effectively a borrowed power, right? It's something that is going to empower you detached from your class, detached from your spec. As I pointed out already quite a few times at this point, this new borrowed power is not as intrusive, is not as powerful, and is not as meta-defining as we have seen previously when it comes to borrowed powers. We have gotten used to things like Azerite armor, things like corruption, things like essences from Eternal Palace, and even before in Legion, things like the random Legion legendaries, or Legendaries for short. All of these were very, very powerful systems, which skewed the power level of several specs to be meta or to be trash, depending on how well they synergized with these powers. When it comes to Shards of Domination, it's definitely not like that. Shards of Domination are very deterministic. They are also very easy to acquire and to basically have the same setup on for everyone. You won't be the only fire mage left out because the other two guild fire mages have gotten better shards than you have and they do 15% more damage than you do. This is not going to happen with Shards of Domination. Now, some people might do a full 180 and go the other way around with complaining. So instead of complaining that this borrowed power is too powerful, they will complain that this borrowed power doesn't really do anything. So it's kind of like an annoying system you have to keep track of. You have to manage your gear, you have to manage your socket slots and all of that for what is not going to be too big of a power increase. Now, the power increase seems still, good enough. It's powerful enough that you want to go through with it. It's powerful enough that it's going to feel satisfying to use, but it is likely not going to be meta-defining, meta-deciding, because not only there isn't many options of these shards that you can go for, they are also the same for everyone. So they won't have too many different effects if you're playing a balanced druid or if you're playing an outlaw rogue. But we will go over those effects soon in this video. Now, how do you acquire these shards? You don't have to do anything special, just go into the raid and kill the bosses. They will drop the shards for you. The shards are in 3 types. They are blood, they are frost, and they are unholy. The shards are divided into 3 types. You have the damage types of shards, you have the healing types of shards, and then you have the, defense/utility type of shards. Now, you actually have to socket these shards into your gear just like they were normal sockets. Gear that welcomes these shards comes in helms, shoulders, and chest shapes for all 4 armor types. So whether you're a cloth, leather, mail, or plate user, all 4 different types will have a Shard of Domination socket in the helmet, in the shoulders, and in the chest slot. The difference, just like the BOEs we have talked about a few videos ago, the difference comes in the last 2 pieces. Cloth is going to have bracers and belts, with a Shard of Domination. Leather is going to have gloves and boots, mail is going to have belt and boots, and then plate is going to have bracers and gloves. This is relevant because you also have legendaries to craft. And very likely many of your specs are going to have some conflict of interest with these slots, myself included. You have a legendary currently in your helmet, in your chest, or in your shoulders, and then depending on the armor type you have to recraft it. You have to craft one in a different slot, so that it's not going to be in the slot of a Shard of Domination, which is the reason why throughout the PTR of 9.1, Blizzard has been adding one extra craftable slot to many legendaries, because those were legendaries that happen to have two slots coinciding with the slots of the Shards of Domination. So you will have to recraft them before 9.1 comes out. A particular note for everyone about this: if the legendary you have to recraft is in a slot that can be socketed, very important. For example, if it's in a belt slot, if it's in a ring slot, maybe it's in a bracer slot, what you want to do is to go and buy the Season 1 socket from Venari. Why? Because in about 7 days, when the patch launches, Venari is going to lose those sockets. They are only going to be available in the Season 2 version from the new vendor. But legendaries can still be crafted and can still be socketed with the Season 1 socket. So if you want to recraft another legendary at rank 4 because you already know your legendary has to be replaced by a Shards of Domination socket piece of gear, just buy the Season 1 socket from Venari, so you will be able to use it on your new crafted legendary. In 9.1, once you have your legendary crafted at, rank 5 or rank 6, you will of course need a new season socket to apply it. But if you already had a rank 4 legendary with a socket and you upgrade it to rank 5, that socket, that old season 1 socket will remain, will stay on the piece of gear. So remember that. Now, when it comes to the actual shards, once you have gotten them from the raids, once you have killed the bosses and looted the shards, you will of course have to actually be looting the pieces of gear that these shards are going to go in, which might be quite a lengthy process. It also might be frustrating. This is probably the biggest point of contention I have to go through with this new system, the fact that you need specific pieces of gear from the raid, and it might take a while for you to get all of these pieces, right? It's going to be perfectly common, and I'm afraid to say quite frustrating for someone who is starting to get geared in mythic level gear, stuck with a couple of heroic pieces. Worst case scenario, even a normal piece of gear, just because that piece has a Shard of Domination socket and he hasn't been able to find a better version yet. Now, it is worth mentioning, in case you are wondering this, every single piece of gear that has a Shard of Domination socket assigned to it will have the shard from the bosses. So it's not going to be a specific chest in the entire raid that has a socket. If you are plate, for example, and there are 3 chest pieces dropping from the raid, all 3 of those chest pieces will have a Shard of Domination. If you're looking for boots, and your boots, if you're a cloth user or a mail user or whatnot, have a Shard of Domination, then all the 3 different types of boots from the raid are going to have the Shards of Domination sockets in them. But I'm sure for some people it might still take a while. For example, I still have 213 pens because I haven't been able to find anything better yet. I can only imagine if that is going to happen to someone when he is still needing Shards of Domination. The addition that Blizzard had when it came to empowering the raid side of the system and making it more relevant for raid is that having 3 shards of the same color is going to give you a set bonus. Of course, because you can only use 5 shards, you can only have 1 of these bonuses active at any given time. The Bloodlink, the Winds of Winter, and the Chaos Pain for the 3 different types of gems. Now, what is going to happen most of the time is that, for example, if you're a damage dealer, let's just say the Frost gem is going to be stronger for your spec at doing damage. The way these shards are set up are to allow you to go for the same type of shards you want, plus the 2 shards of the same color to get the set bonus. For example, if you're a damage dealer, you're going to have a damage shard for Blood, a damage shard for Frost, and a damage shard for Unholy. But you need 3 shards of the same color to get the set bonus. Well, thankfully, we have 5 slots in the Shards of Domination. So what you will do, for example, if you wanted the Frost set bonus, Winds of Winter, you will take all 3 Frost shards, including the damage shard for Frost, and then with your 2 remaining slots, you will take the red damage shard and then the unholy damage shard. The same goes if you're a healer. If you're a healer and you generally want healing shards, and your strongest set bonus is going to be the red one, the Blood Link, you will take all 3 blood shards, and then with your 2 remaining slots for your shards, you will take the Frost healing shard and the unholy healing shard. Effectively, this will turn out being you with your 3 shards of your role, if you want to tank, if you want to heal, if you want to DPS, and then 2 more shards to finish your set bonus. Set bonuses, because they could be used by everyone, you know, are sort of half and half in what they can do. You have Blood Link, for example, which is going to pulse doing shadow damage, but at the same time it's also going to heal yourself, and if you're at full HP, is going to spill that healing to someone else. Winds of Winter is going to increase your crit chance, and once you cap on this max crit chance, you will unleash some frost damage, but also absorbing 100% of the damage you dealt. And finally, Chaos Bane is going to drain soul fragments from your target, giving you primary stat. And when you get to the cap, which is 150 primary stat, it will deal a bunch of damage and also give you 300 primary stat. So these are effects that can be useful to a tank, but they can also be useful to a healer and then be useful to a DPS. So you might go for any one of these if you're a tank, healer, or DPS. The important thing to mention with these set bonuses is that they only specifically and exclusively work in a raid. So you don't have to worry about these set bonuses when it comes to Mythic Plus, and you don't have to worry about these set bonuses when it comes to PvP. Now, there is one weird thing, which is possibly making this even weirder. As you can see here, this is my helmet, this is my shoulder piece, and this is my chest piece. As you can see, the helmet has the grayed out effect of the unholy set bonus. The shoulder piece has the grayed out effect of the frost set bonus, and then the chest piece has the active blood set bonus. This is weird. I don't have any other way to explain this. Basically, if you want to go for unholy as your set bonus, you have to have a helmet in your Shards of Domination. If you want to go for a frost set bonus, you have to have a shoulder piece, and if you want to have the blood set bonus, you have to have a chest. Now, this isn't that relevant because eventually, given enough time, you will have all 5 pieces of gear with Shards of Domination. You will have the helmet, you will have the shoulder piece, and you will have the chest. But maybe, let's say you have gotten to only loot 3 pieces of Shards of Domination socket slots. So you're like, okay, well, I have 3 pieces, I can get my set bonus. But you are a cloth user, you looted a bracer piece with the socket slot, you looted the belt with the socket slot, and you looted the chest with the socket slot, and you wanted the frost set bonus. Well, the frost set bonus requires shoulders, so you will have to hold on having the frost set bonus until you actually loot the shoulder piece, which could be annoying, could be frustrating. In case you're wondering, well, does it mean I have to wait for several weeks without socketing anything until I get my piece? The answer is no. As soon as you have 2,500 Stygia, you can go to Bonesmith Harmir, which is one of the Necrolord soulbinds, which is going to hang out in Cortia, and he is going to sell you the Soulfire Chisel. This is not going to require reputation, it's not going to require anything, it's just purchasable from the start. This item is a one-time purchase which you can use to unsocket and resocket all of your shards. There is not going to be any secondary cost. You will not destroy the shard if you unsocket it. You will not derank the shard if you unsocket it. It will not cost anything. So you will be able to mix and match sockets depending on the fight, depending on the encounter, or depending on the content you're doing, which means if we were in the unlucky example I mentioned, like a specific spec needing or wanting the frost bonus, but he doesn't have the needed piece of gear for the frost bonus, then you can just socket a bunch of red shards and get the red bonus until you loot the actual item for the frost set bonus. And I understand, as I explained this, that Blizzard has made this needlessly complicated, honestly. At the start, particularly, is going to be needlessly complicated. In a few weeks, sure, you will have all the pieces of gear, so you will be able to mix and match at your behest. At the start is when it's going to be frustrating, right? Now, of the tinkering you can do with these Shards of Domination pieces, it's worth mentioning that as soon as you hit Honored with one of the new 2 factions in Korthia, the Death's Advance, by hitting Honored, you will be able to purchase for 2000 Stygia. So yeah, that's a bunch of Stygia. You will be able to purchase an epic piece of gear. Yes, it's very shit. Yes, it's just 220 item level, but at the very least, it's going to have a Socket of Domination guaranteed. So for cloth, you will have the belt. For leather, you will have the hands. For mail, you will have the belt. And for plate, you will have the hands again, the gloves again. So this is going to be basically some sort of safeguard, you know, some sort of emergency purchase if you really wanted that extra slot that you needed to complete your bonuses, for example. You can go and just buy a shitty lower item level piece just to make sure you have the socket. Now, these shards themselves can be upgraded from rank 1 to rank 5, but I wouldn't worry too much. It is something that is going to take several weeks, because these pieces are going to be upgradable with Stygian Ember. Stygian Ember drops from raid bosses. Now, we have no idea how many of them are going to drop from bosses. It's gonna take 5 embers to go to rank 2, and then 15 to go to rank 3, and then 30, and then 50. The total number of embers is going to be 100 embers per piece, for a total of 500 embers for all the 5 pieces, or possibly more if you are planning on using different shards for different types of content. Now, the hope that everyone has is that there is going to be more than just 1 per boss, because with just 10 bosses, 1 per boss means you're gonna get, even if we count that there is going to be the Shaping Faith weekly in Korthia, which is a weekly quest which just tells you to go and do stuff in Korthia, that awards you with 10 extra Stygian Embers. Even with that, it would only mean 20 Stygian Embers per week, which would mean 5 weeks just to upgrade a single shard to rank 5. So basically, over a month to get one of the shards at max level, which would mean 5 months to get your full shards leveled up, which looks kind of slow, honestly. We also have to point out, just for clarity, that very likely you will be focusing on the shards you care about. These are the shards you can choose from, and very obviously, if you're a DPS, you are not going to care about the extra shard of rev you socketed in your gear because you need the red bonus. This is just some extra leech. Or maybe the Shard of Jas, if you're a DPS. Incoming healing you receive is increased by 1%. You know, you just put this shard in because you wanted the red bonus. You don't give a shit about this one. If you're a DPS, you care about the DPS shards. So you have the Shard of Beck, which increases your damage by 2% when you have 50% of more health. You care about the Shard of Core, which is the blue, the Frost damage shard, which is your damage is increased by 3% for 20 seconds after attacking an enemy you have not yet damaged. And then you care about the Unholy damage shard, which is the Shard of Diz. Damaging a target increases your damage done to that target by 0.33% for 4 seconds, stacking up 3 times. That's what you care about. Those are the 3 shards you will be leveling up. The same can be said for a healer. If you're a healer, maybe you don't give a shit about the Shard of Oath. Your speed is increased by 35. I mean, sure, it's useful, you're faster, but honestly, if you're a healer, you're gonna go for the Shard of Zed. Your helpful healing spells and abilities have a chance to grant your target an unholy aura, draining health from nearby enemies. Or your critical heals cause the target to absorb the next damage dealt to them within 6 seconds. You know, those are the type of shards you will be caring about upgrading. And this is going to be the same for everyone. You will have your 3 very important shards for your role, and then you will have the 2 extra, you know, the scuffed, useless ones that you have to use because you want a set bonus. So upgrading them, you won't care too much about. It's worth pointing out, it's going to be interesting which types of shards people are going to go for, because of course it's very simple, it's very obvious to just say, well, DPS are going to go for DPS shards, duh. But tanks and healers are going to have a little bit more freedom. It is possible, it is in fact likely, that healers, for example, are still going to go for damage shards, for example. The same can be said perhaps for tanks. They are not as limited when it comes to choosing these shards as a DPS would be. It might, as opposite, be a little bit more frustrating for them because maybe they are more likely to be juggling away different shards. You know, maybe a healer in Mythic Plus is going to go for more damage, and then when he goes to raiding, he wants more healing, which is going to require them to use different shards and then upgrade them all at the same time, which is going to require more Stygian Embers, which is going to require more time. As opposed to a DPS, you know, who is just chilling with his 3 different DPS shards and he's done. If I had to take a guess when it comes to Stygian Embers, I am going to assume, similar to other types of things you needed to loot from bosses in the past, there are going to be multiples of them, increasing in numbers based on the difficulty. So I wouldn't be surprised if LFR dropped 1 per boss, if normal dropped 2 to 3 per boss, heroic dropped 4 to 5, and mythic dropped 6 or 7 per boss. That would make sense. We have gotten this before multiple times with boss loot, with boss resources being dropped, so it would make sense here as well. The last thing worth mentioning in this video is related to the rest of your gear, because we are talking about the Shards of Domination and what you're gonna have to do with your gear to make them slot in. We have to remember, everyone, that in 9.1 you will have from the get-go Valor point system. This is something that has gone under the radar because Valor was this sort of last-minute addition by Blizzard halfway through the tier. By the time people already had 220 plus item levels, so it's not that Valor was that relevant. It was mostly used by alts or casuals. So the vast majority of the you know, competitive or enthusiast player base of Mythic Plus and raiding didn't really care about Valor points too much. Now though, Valor points is going to be a crucial system compared to before, so it's going to be much more relevant. It's going to give you even more incentive in doing Mythic Plus to get more Valor, to upgrade your gear. You know, it is going to be very likely, almost certain in fact, that in the first week of Mythic Plus, right, you will find yourself with several pieces of gear all at like 229, maybe 233 item level, and they can be upgraded all the way up to 239, and you need several thousand Valor points, which is something you did not have at the start of this expansion, so it's going to be much more relevant. Of course, we also have to remember, however, that just like it was useless and pointless in 9.0.5 because many people already got it, Valor upgrades are going to be gated by Keystone Master. Yes, indeed, not many people cared about it when it was launched because many people already had Keystone Master, so it wasn't even something that probably they didn't even remember about it. However, when 9.1 launches, you won't have Keystone Master. So yes, in the first week, you will have a bunch of pieces of gear that can be upgraded with Valor, but they won't be able to be upgraded at their higher levels, their higher ranks, until you get the 2000 rating from Mythic Plus first, the Keystone Master achievement. So there's also that. And lastly, when it comes to gearing, we can finish talking about PvP gear. To remind everyone that Blizzard is reintroducing adaptable PvP gear, which is the short version of saying PvP gear will have less item level normally and it will increase once you engage in PvP combat, as a way to discourage PvE players to flood the PvP competitive scene just to get a bunch of gear. Now, if you're getting 1800 rating, for example, you're taking the equivalent of a 213 item level piece of gear, basically the equivalent of an heroic piece of gear. So it's not going to be as appealing to raiders, for example, anymore. Now, I hope this shed some light on what is going to happen in 9.1 and the gearing setup, the gearing system that is going to happen in 9.1. It is going to be a system very focused on raids, that's true. We haven't gotten this recently, we have to say, because essences in Eternal Palace could be acquired outside of the raid. Many of them, in fact, didn't have anything to do with raiding. The same can go for corruptions. You could just farm corruptions as low as freaking World Quest gear, as well as Azerite armor, which eventually, once the vendor was introduced, did not need raid gear as much, although it was still quite important. This one though seems to be very much more focused on raid stuff. So the raid bosses need to drop the gear for the sockets, and then you need to kill the raid bosses to even get the shards, and then you need to continue killing the bosses to get the Stygian Embers to upgrade the shards. And then the big bonus at the end, the big set bonus at the end, is only going to work in the raid. So it's a very raid-centered and raid-focused new borrowed power compared to what we have seen recently, in the past couple of tiers from BFA at least. So, let me guys know what you think about this new system, particularly if you raid, because if you don't raid, it's not really gonna touch you too much, honestly. thank you guys, as always, anyways, for watching the video. Be free to subscribe, and also be free not to. I will not judge, at least on the surface. See you guys soon, and in the meantime, I already know I will not loot these fucking shard pieces for weeks, and I will go insane